Howdy, Agency Overdrive members. Exciting lecture here. Again, another massive resource. We're not going to spend too much time on walking through all the details, but it's relatively self-explanatory. Clients want their agencies to be able to give them projections. Yeah, it's true. It's really hard to know. It's impossible to know how things are going to play out. You don't know how conversion rate's going to increase. You don't know what's going to happen to click-through rate. You don't know what's going to happen to CPM and CPC. You don't know what's going to happen to clients' margins. You don't know whether or not you're going to be able to spend the entire budget. You don't know how you're going to be able to scale. It's true. I mean, we've managed 700 accounts, and we still don't know because every account is different. But clients still want to know that you have a framework to project different scenarios. And what I'm going to give you today is that the exact framework, the exact spreadsheet that we've sent to some extremely large clients that at the top tier of clients that we work with. These are clients that are spending $5, $10, $30 million a year annually across paid media. And these were sheets that we sent them, undoctored, exactly the outline with which we conduct ourselves. So I think it's a really valuable thing to have. And you could use this for Facebook. You could use it for display. You could use it for Google. You could use it for a combination of paid media outlook. It's very flexible. And it's something which if you send this to your client, they're going to be like, wow, like you guys really know what you're talking about. You really understand your numbers. You're confident. You're thoughtful because you have a conservative, an expected, and aggressive model for growth. And you've put this together professionally and visually in a way that just makes sense. And that's what you're going to have access to today. So you open up this sheet, make a file, go to file, make a copy, and you're good to go. And you could edit it, do whatever you wish with it. So it starts off with you pull data from the prior quarter or the prior month or the prior year. That's up to you. I'm going to walk you through this sheet as if it's a Facebook ads analysis, but this could work the same way for Google Ads, for YouTube. If you're pitching an entire model for Facebook, Google, paid search, and social, like it's very flexible because these are just core metrics that apply to every platform. Spend, CPM, impressions, these are things that are applicable across the digital advertising landscape. So let's take a look at the first tab where you first, again, step one is you pull that prior data. I recommend pulling a quarter, 3 months of data because that gives you a good starting point. It's enough time. It accounts for some seasonality. It accounts for some holidays, whatever. Like a month is the minimum. A month is like as condensed as you'll ever want to go. So we have total spend. Okay, so these are just example numbers. And these are all editable. So anything in blue text means that it's editable. Black text means that it is the output of a formula. So let's walk through the line. So here's imaginary client. It's, I don't know. What's a company that I'd love to have as a client? It's Home Depot. I'd love to get Home Depot as a client. So $854,000 in total spend. Their CPM was $13.50. Which means, again, mathematically, right? You take spend and you take your CPM and you get your total impressions, your click-through rate, which is something which you'll have to pull because then you'll pull that from the account. What was your click-through rate? Link clicks. 0.26%, which gives you, obviously, your clicks by dividing clicks and impressions. Multiplying your impressions and your click-through rate gives you your total clicks. Your average CPC, again, you could get this from the account or you could just do the math because once you know your total spend and you know your total clicks, you just divide your total clicks by your total spend and you get your average CPC. Conversion rate, that's another metric you'll have to get from your account, 0.8% in this case, which gives you your conversions, 1316, because again, once you have your conversion rate and you have your clicks, you multiply those two numbers by each other and you get your total conversions. And there's a notation here, purchase 28-day click. That's the conversion attribution that we're looking at in Facebook. But if it's Google, maybe it's just conversions for sales, or it's all conversions. Again, it's flexible. The point is that you have this framework. How you use it is entirely up to you, and it could be used in different ways. LTV of a customer, very important. So for this hypothetical client, actually, I think this is for an existing. This is actually for an existing client. LTV in our case was $2,200. Yours might be $2. It might be $1 million, whatever. But it's an important number because that's how you're going to look at profit. So $2,200 on average, this client generates over the course of a customer's lifetime, which gives us the total revenue of $2.894 million. And of course, you multiply the LTV by the total conversion volume, which gives us an ROAS of 339%. Total conversion value, which is your revenue divided by your spend, gives you your return on ad spend, ROAS. So these are the core metrics that we start with. Now, this is not what's that impressive. It's just like, okay, here's a basic overview of the data. But what's impressive is when we go over the annual campaign, and let me zoom out. This is where clients get really, really happy. This is where they're like, wow, I love this. Okay, so it's 3 growth models, all color-coded. You have the conservative growth model, you have an expected growth model, and an aggressive growth model. Well, why? Why do we have 3 growth models? The answer is you can't go and tell a client, this is what we know is going to happen. This is what we expect to happen. Because you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. So when you go to a client and say, listen, we don't know what's going to happen, but we're not going to just leave you in the dark. We'll give you 3 versions of what could happen, and we're now covering our bases across a range. And that's the type of thing a client is looking for. So let's just take a look at the conservative growth model to start. At the very first stage, you need to pick and understand the metrics that you think your management will have an impact on. So to me, it's spend, CPM, CTR, and conversion rate. Spend is a function of how good you're doing. When you're doing better, you'll spend more. CPM is a function of it, specific to the platform, but with Google, Facebook, your click-through rate, your targeting, right? Like the quality of your ads. Click-through rate is a function of your creative. And conversion rate is a function of your conversion rate optimization, your landing page testing, your A/B testing, your cart testing, your price elasticity testing, so on and so forth. So in the conservative model for this account, and again, these numbers here, 10, -5, 5, and 0, this is not necessarily the numbers for every conservative growth model. If you feel for a specific client that conservatively, that like you're really sure that you'll get a -20% movement with CPM, then say that. And then maybe in the expected, it'll be 30%. So for this like typical or existing client, this is what we felt made sense. Like conservatively, we thought we could do a 10% increase in quarterly cost and spend, a -5% decrease or a 5% decrease in CPM, a 5% increase in click-through rate, and conversion rate 0%. That was conservative. No change in conversion rate because they already had a relatively strong conversion rate as far as we were able to ascertain. The beautiful thing here is now, once you have these numbers at the top, it filters through annually over the next 3 quarters, starting from what you've pulled in your first sheet. So spend is a 10% increase going from Q1 to Q2 to Q3 to Q4. If this goes to 20%, look at that. All those numbers change. Let's move that back to 10%. They change again. If conversion rate increases by 30%, all these numbers change, and this chart down here changes as well, right? So if we go to 0%, the numbers change and the chart changes. So down the line, total spend, CPM, impressions, click-through rate, clicks, average CPC, conversion rate, conversions, lifetime value, that's static. But again, you could configure this sheet to have an increase or decrease in LTV. But typically LTV is not changing all that much. Total revenue and return on ad spend, and how that impacts how these metrics are impacted based on the changes in performance that you expect under a conservative growth model. Moving down below, we have this chart, which is a visual representation of the conservative growth model, where total spend is in dark blue, the revenue is in light blue, and the conversion volume is in that purple line at the top. Below the chart, we have a few very good metrics, right? And this is an annualized overview of what the conservative model would output. So the annual ROAS would be 401%, total annual revenue, total annual spend, adding up the important columns. The increase in sale, realized customers. Now, the realized customers and realized revenue is important. It's not just the sum of all the customers and the sum of all the revenue. It is the difference if performance had stayed the same from Q1 straight to Q4 based on the data of the previous quarter or the previous month across or against rather the performance in your conservative model. The realized revenue is how much better, not as the total revenue under these next 4 quarters. The total revenue, the additional revenue that you're going to realize versus just staying with the same performance that you had in the previous quarter. That's why realized revenue and realized customers, is so important. That's the conservative model. And then we have the exact same thing under the expected growth model, where each of these metrics should be at least or more aggressive than the conservative model, right? It can't be a replica. There's got to be some changes somewhere. So for this account, we felt that click-through rate was the biggest movement that we could have. So we went from a 5% to a 30% click-through rate because we felt that when we did an analysis of this client's accounts, we felt that their creative and their targeting were really lacking. And if we increased the quality of the creative, the relevancy of the creative, and the relevancy of the targeting, we could absolutely see a 30% increase in click-through rate. Also, click-through rate was really small. It was not if click-through rate was 3%, I would not think that we could have a 30% increase in click-through rate. But if click-through rate is 0.26%, then look, going 30% quarter over quarter, you go to 0.26 to 0.34 to 0.44 to 0.57. That's not even 0.57 at the end of the year is a really not an incredibly good click-through rate for Facebook at all. So that's why I felt that we could really see a 30% increase in click-through rate, which, by the way, means we're getting so many more clicks. And if we're seeing a decrease in CPM, those clicks are getting a little bit cheaper. Conversion rate's getting a little bit better now in the expected model, 5%. But again, not a massive increase, 0.8 to 0.84 to 0.88 to 0.93, 5% increase a quarter. These are not even my expected growth models are not overly aggressive. But look at the returns. You're dealing with $17 million in realized revenue with small incremental changes, with small incremental improvements. And on the aggressive side, where I feel, and by the way, when I make aggressive models, I feel I'm shooting for at least the aggressive or beyond. But I like to temper expectations in reality, just being realistic, tempering expectations. So I see a conversion rate quarterly change of 15%, CTR of 35%, CPM negative 15%, spend quarterly change of 15%. And that gives us $36 million in realized revenue for the client over the course of a year, right? And these are just the numbers. And these are not unrealistic goals. Nothing crazy is happening here. Look at click-through rate, for example. Again, even under the aggressive growth model, 0.26% to 0.64%. That's not crazy. 0.64% is not a crazy click-through rate. Right? But all these things play with each other. They interact. There's a dynamic tension between each one of these metrics. And when everything's moving positively, things get a lot better. The main purpose here is when you send this to a client is I understand the account. I understand where we could most likely improve. And I have a feeling ranging from conservative to aggressive, where we have expected in the middle, exactly how much we're going to improve by or around how much we're going to improve by. So it's a super valuable thing to do. It's a super valuable thing to understand how to present to a client. And now you have it. You could use this for Google ads. You could use it for an Instagram campaign. You could use it for a Snapchat campaign. You could use it for a YouTube retargeting campaign. You could use it to pitch an entire client on if we're going to do YouTube, Google ads, display, retargeting, brand awareness, everything for you. And here is the conservative, expected, and aggressive growth models based on your prior data. It's a really solid sheet. Again, we've sent this exact sheet to some of our largest opportunities over the last 6 months. And the feedback we have gotten when we have sent this sheet was, wow. It's all the other agencies pitching in the RFP did not send us things like this well put together. So I hope you use it well. I'm excited for you to use it well. Let me know how you use it. And I look forward to seeing you all in the very next lecture. Cheers.